If you can learn how to take those same concepts and apply them to different movement patterns, to different modalities, and to different training structures in general, you're gonna be able to train more frequently, you're gonna be able to progress faster, and you're gonna get hurt less. Hey guys, my name is Ben Pollack. A lot of you probably know me. I have followed ELITEFTS at least since I started training, which was 25 years ago. So not quite the beginning of the company, but pretty darn close. And I've competed in powerlifting for, since 2011, so 15 of those 25 years. And I think that over the course of my training career, my philosophy towards getting stronger has evolved several times. I think of it more as a punctuated equilibrium than a gradual evolution, which is the same way that, you should think about progress in general. And I actually asked Noah, our videographer, if I could record this intro on the treadmill, because the biggest and most recent change that I've made towards my approach to strength, it honestly involves warming up and doing more restorative work, which for the first 75% of my career, I ignored completely, which I think is a very common, kind of mentality, especially if you start younger and, your joints aren't as beat up and you have more energy and you have more free time. It's easy to just go straight into the hard stuff and to only do the hard stuff. And obviously there's a cost associated with that. And I think everybody knows and understands that, but they don't always know and understand how to really structure their training in order to kind of incorporate some of that recovery work, some of that restorative work into the meat and potatoes stuff. So that's my goal for today, is to kind of give you guys an idea of how to approach that. And there's umpteen million different ways that you can do it. For today, we're gonna use what I call a restorative creatine day. Creatine doesn't refer to the supplement, although the supplement can be beneficial. I'm not coordinated. Can't talk and walk at the same time. The supplement can be beneficial, but really it refers to the phosphocreatine energy system. Same energy system you're gonna use on your max effort days. And you can think of the creatine days as, kind of these more dynamic effort days. The important part here is the restorative part, because in my experience, when lifters in general think about speed work, they still try to make it really hard. And there's value to that. There's absolutely a time and place for hard speed work. And I think in the conjugate system and the West Side method, which I know a lot of followers of ELITEFTS use, that's the majority of your dynamic effort training, is that harder kind of training. If you can learn how to take those same concepts and apply them to different movement patterns, to different modalities, and to different training structures in general, you're gonna be able to train more frequently, you're gonna be able to progress faster, and you're gonna get hurt less. And that's just obviously a very high level. So over the next, I don't know how long it's gonna take, but that's what I'm gonna show you today. I'm gonna give you a few ideas about how you can incorporate this into your own program, whatever. I truly believe this will work for any program on the planet. It's almost like a plug and play type thing. Not perfectly, but pretty darn close. And as I go, I'm gonna explain what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and how you can make similar choices for yourself. That's the most important thing here. I don't want you guys to just straight up copy me. If you're just doing exactly what I'm doing, you're gonna get a fraction of the benefits. If you can learn at a higher level, if you can zoom out and see the bigger picture of this kind of restorative work, you're going to be able to, again, see, I would argue you will see an exponential increase in your progress. So it's not gonna be twice as fast, it's gonna be like 4 times as fast. That's not gonna be true for everybody. Again, coordination is not my strong point. If you are a 19-year-old kid, this might not benefit you all that much. In the long term it will, but not in the short term. If you're a 40-year-old guy with a demanding career and kids, a family life and hobbies, and training is still very important to you, but you gotta make time for it, like you actively have to make time to train, this is gonna be really, really important. So I think that covers it for the intro. Yeah, let's get into the workout. First part of the warm-up was walking, just straight up walking. It doesn't have to be walking, it can be any sort of, kind of low impact, low effort cardiovascular activity. If you wanna ride a stationary bike, if you wanna do the elliptical, all those are perfectly fine. Spend at least 5 to 10 minutes doing that. Don't skip that part. Very tempting to skip that part. Please do not skip that part. The next set of rules for these restorative days, rule number 1, and this is the rule that everyone wants to break for, well, I understand why, but don't break it. You are not getting hot and sweaty and out of breath during these workouts. You are not turning these into cardiovascular activity. If you do that, you're not only not getting the restorative benefits, you're creating more of a training response that then you have to pay those costs separately. So no matter how boring it gets, and it will get boring, because remember, this is not hard speed work that we're doing. You gotta calm down, put on some chill music, have a friend to go through this with you. If at any point you start to get hot and sweaty and out of breath, take a little bit of longer rest time, okay? Your rest times on these days, unlimited. This is not 45, 60, 90 seconds rest in between sets. This is, I'm gonna rest until I'm bored, all right? Think of yourself like a track athlete. You do your 100-meter sprint. It takes you 10 seconds because you're Usain Bolt, and then you rest for like 20 minutes before your next sprint. Obviously, you don't need to rest for 20 minutes, but take your time through these. Number 2, you're gonna limit spinal loading, okay? Very, very, very tempting on these days because once you get into them, you're gonna start feeling pretty good. Half an hour in, you're gonna be like, yeah, this is my day. It might be your day, but you're not gonna take it, okay? So if you're tempted to go over 55, 60% 1 rep max in terms of total load, all right? Not just weight on the bar, including any accommodating resistance you might choose to use. No, have some discipline, back off, keep those weights light. Insultingly light is the phrase that, kind of my mentor used for me. Even if you feel embarrassed doing it, and trust me, I have had days where I have 95 pounds on the bar, all right? It gets a little embarrassing, that's okay. You have a goal, you know your goal, you're going after that. All right. And then rule number 3, you have to be intentional with your movements. This is what I was talking about earlier. If you just straight up copy what I'm doing, you will see some benefits, but you're not going to get as much as if you choose movements that fit your body and fit your goals. And that's a hard concept to learn. And if you're just starting out, you probably won't be able to do it. But if you are in the target audience and you're a little bit of an older guy, or you do have kind of a stressful life, then probably you've been in this long enough to kind of understand what I'm talking about here. If not, maybe we can have a separate video about that. Maybe you can look at some other videos and kind of learn what movements fit your body. For today, I'm actually not going to do that. For today, I want to show off 3 very specific movements for very specific reasons. So we're going to start off, and I almost always start off these days with a little bit of a circuit, a plyometric circuit. The idea here is that, hey, it gives me a chance to practice some of that more aggressive, explosive contractile output without any spinal loading whatsoever. And then also, it serves as a little bit of an extended warm-up, because remember, the warm-up is not just physiological. The warm-up is also neurological. And if you've ever gone into the gym and you just straight up throw 315 on the bar, even if you're an 800-pound squatter, it's still going to feel a lot heavier than if you warm up a little bit first, okay? So all of that is kind of important, but as you'll see in practice, it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. So the 3 movements I'm going to show you, number 1 is going to be a box jump. I'll be honest with you, I am showing you the box jump because we have these very cool branded ELITEFTS boxes, and because the box jump is really easily progressible. That's another kind of component that you can think about on these restorative days. You want to start off with very low to moderate levels of effort, and you want to ramp up as you go. For the same reasons that you start off with a walk on the treadmill, and then you go into plyometrics, and then you go into your main movements, all right? We want to be progressive with this stuff, not just in the big picture, but also, kind of in a more acute sense. So we'll start with the box jumps, and then we're going to go over to the GHR. I'm going to show you guys a slow eccentric GHR. The point of that is I see so many people get GHRs wrong. It's hard to do a GHR completely wrong. If you're doing one, you're probably going to get some type of benefit from it. But if you're doing it right, you're going to get a much bigger benefit. And I think that's probably true for everything that you do in the gym. But again, GHRs are one of the ones that I think are one of the easiest to, again, kind of get wrong. And they're one of the most important ones for, I would argue they're one of the most important movements for every person on the planet. I really would argue that. Even if you're not a strength athlete, training the posterior chain is just so beneficial for everything that we do in daily life. I can make a really strong argument, and maybe I'll get into this on Table Talk, that you can actually reduce your stress outside of the gym by doing GHRs. So we'll talk about that, and then I'm going to show you a sprint on the assault bike. If you guys are following me online, you know I have become a very, very big proponent of the assault bike. I think it is a valuable tool for almost any goal that you have. And again, I think it's one of those ones that most lifters, and this is more specific to powerlifters, they really neglect, because if you get into powerlifting, you probably don't like cardio, right? If you got into powerlifting, you probably, you know, at least tried going into the gym and getting on the elliptical for an hour first, or maybe you tried running cross country in high school, which is what I did, and you were like, this fucking sucks, this is boring, and I hate it. But you got to do it sometimes, not just for your health, but also for your performance. So I'm going to take you guys through that circuit, and then we will get into the main movements, which are just going to be very straightforward. I'm going to do deadlift and then some type of press variation that I haven't decided yet. Again, it's a restorative day. The exact movements aren't so important as the general structure of the day as a whole, and that should cover it. I am not the right guy to tell you guys the perfect technique for a box jump. The perfect technique for a box jump in this context, not really that important. If you're trying to get a 50-inch vertical, maybe it's a different story. For now, what I'm really trying to show you is pacing, and then, you know, kind of that increased effort as you go. So we're going to start off with just the 20 inches. Again, this is why I really like box jumps. There's like no effort there, right? There's no effort, and I'm not turning this into a CrossFit thing. I'm not doing my next jump. I'm talking, right? So it's gonna take me a little bit longer to catch my breath, but I'm just kind of pacing myself nice and easy. I do usually try to make an effort to alternate which legs I step back with. I don't know if that's a little bit of an autistic thing or if it's, you know, just actually does help with symmetry, but it's easy to get kind of lost in the details of this stuff, and I don't want you guys to do that. But I do want you, again, to be intentional about what you're doing, all right? That's the point there. It's not that it matters how many times I step back with my left leg, how many times I step back with my right leg. What matters is that I'm thinking about what I'm doing while I'm doing it. If you turn these days into like, you know, kind of mindless going through the motions, again, you will still get some benefit, but you won't get all the benefit. There are days in the gym where I have my guys say, hey, I want you to go in. I don't want you to think about anything. I want you to take your bro with you. I want you to get a good pump. I don't want you to think about what you're doing. I want you to choose whatever feels fun in the moment. I want you to go through the motions. That has value, but not on these types of days. So I did a couple reps there. You can see, again, I'm getting out of breath because I'm overweight and talking, but I'm trying to take my time here. So we're gonna go up to 24 inches. And again, it's not like this is max effort box jump. I'm literally going through the motions. And generally, I'll probably stick to something like, if I were gonna show the whole circuit, I'd probably just do like 3 to 5 jumps, and then I'd go into my next movement, then I'd go on the bike, and then I'd rotate through. Just for, you know, expediency's sake, we're gonna do everything all at once. And that's fine. It doesn't need to be a circuit. Circuit is just, you know, a good way to save time. And so the pace that you're going at is whatever pace you're comfortable with, all right? I'm not talking about, you know, not getting hot and sweaty here. I'm talking about increasing level of effort. You can take your time with that, all right? It's not like you got to do 5 reps and then we're going up to the next level, and then 5 reps and then we're going up to the next level. Think about how you're feeling. Don't get locked into these preconceived notions of set and rep schemes. There's a time and place for that. It's not here. It's not with these types of sessions, all right? So that's a little bit more effort, right? Like if I were actually warmed up, I could probably go a little bit higher, but that's about the highest level of effort that I will go on, again, these types of restorative sessions. The thing to remember about the GHR is that the most important muscle here, in my opinion, is the hamstring, and the hamstring crosses both your knee and your hip joint. That's important because what I see so often is people cut the range of motion short. I want you to think like a bodybuilder here. You want the muscle at full length and position, so you need to be fully extended at the knee and the hip. It is very challenging. If you see somebody who can bust out a set of 10 or 15 GHRs, they are probably not actually going through a full range of motion. And it's really, really important because if you're not going through that full range of motion, you are going to have some inhibition when you're going into full knee flexion or full hip extension. And obviously, those are usually the hardest parts of the power lifts. Okay, so if you see somebody who is weak in the hole in a squat, I can almost guarantee you they are not able to do a proper slow eccentric GHR with their knees, you know, kind of fully extended at the bottom. If they can, they probably look really comfortable in the hole in the squat, and they're probably able to maintain a pretty upright torso position on the deadlift. You may need to scale these. If you are not strong enough, and again, I'm not knocking anybody here. Most of you will not be strong enough to do this. Grab a band, put it around the first foot plate, step up here. I'm gonna try not to knock my mic off, and just wrap it around your shoulders, and you're gonna use this to help take some load off the eccentric as you go all the way down. And again, it is a slow eccentric. So I'm here, getting a little bit of a braced position, hips in neutral. I try to get a full exhale, keep those ribs down, keep the core braced, and then I'm gonna go all the way out. And if you're not getting to here, you're not doing it right. And then as you initiate the concentric, you should feel a really hard contraction through the hamstrings. Again, the eccentric should actually be slower than I actually just did. I kind of get lost in trying to talk and hold the band and all that stuff. So let me give you a better example of an actual slow eccentric GHR. And that little pop at the end, probably not good. Again, not super warmed up right now, challenging movement, but that's really what you're going for here. If you can't feel that full lengthened position in the hamstring, back off, get a heavier band, whatever you need to do. And then the last movement in this little circuit, and again, I'm not showing it as a circuit, it's gonna be the assault bike. I'm gonna stop biking right now so you guys can actually hear me. The number one problem I see people make here is that they're not really going all out. Now, it's a restorative day. Again, you should actually start a little bit easier, but for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna show you guys an all-out sprint. You need to treat this like a max effort lift. And when I say that, I mean the most weight you can possibly squat. If you're a 700-pound squatter, you go into the bike thinking that you're gonna squat like 725s on the bar. If you don't have that mentality, you're not gonna get the full benefits from it. You will still get some, but you won't get the full benefits. I also like to include a variety of different programming methods for this. So if I were to have a repeated effort day, this would be a longer form sprint. I'd be going for something like on the order of 45, 60 seconds. For the restorative days, the dynamic effort days, and also if you choose to include them on your max effort days, which you can do, but you gotta be very intentional with that. Your sprints are gonna be on the order more of 8 to 12 seconds, 15 at the top end. Your goal for these shorter sprints is to get your power output as high as possible. So you're looking at the little watts thing on the bike and you're trying to set a PR with that every single time. Now, I said at the beginning of the video, you shouldn't ever be getting hot and sweating out of breath. You will be momentarily hot and sweating out of breath after the end of a max effort sprint, obviously. Wait until you are fully recovered before you do your next sprint, before you do your next exercise. If you just wait until you can catch your breath and you're still hot and sweaty, well, then you're just gonna turn it into some bastardized version of glycolytic work, which again, has benefits, but there are better ways to go about that. So all I need you guys to focus on here, the level of effort that I'm actually giving, all right? Because that, I usually say a little prayer before these because when you're doing the longer form sprints, especially, it does feel like you're gonna die. Like there have been moments after some of these minute long sprints where I'm like, I overdid it, this is the end, it was a good run. I've never had anyone actually die, obviously. If you do have any heart issues or cardiovascular issues, obviously talk with your doctor first, but you gotta go into it with that sort of mentality. So wish me luck. I'm gonna go a couple seconds just to get in the groove and then I'll start sprinting and you'll know when I do. Not bad. A little bit of an awkward bike. Everybody's body is going to fit a different bike, and I actually fit the road bikes a little bit better, I think. But that was pretty good. I got to 1979, which is a couple hundred watts off my best, but I'm a week into this road trip and I'm very depleted, so I'm happy with that. So normally I'd go through this circuit 3 or 4 times, and then I would get into my main work. I think for today, we're just gonna, because it would be exactly the same, right, for all the other rounds, we're just gonna go straight into the main work, and I'll show you what some deadlifts look like with this protocol. So we're on to the main movements. There's a couple of things that I want to talk through here. The first is the movement I'm actually choosing, which is a deadlift. And usually on these restorative days, I will choose a deadlift as one of my main movements because it does not have a loaded eccentric. So in other words, the weight is on the ground at the bottom. A box squat would also work for that. I like movements that have a deloaded, lower body movements that have a deloaded eccentric because it's putting less tension, is requiring less mechanical tension from the hamstrings. And if you think back to earlier in this video, I talked about how, and you know this if you work with me, I hammer hamstrings over and over and over again. So if this were a heavier training day, if this were a max effort day, or if this were a repeated effort day, which I call alactic and glycolytic days, then we would intentionally be working the hamstrings, and I would have my guys, or I'd have me doing something like a Romanian deadlift, or even high rep GHRs or something along those lines. But for a restorative day, we actually don't want that. All right, so that's one benefit of this movement. The other benefit is it's fun, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Two other things I want to mention about this though. First, not wearing any shoes. This is not a big issue for powerlifters. Powerlifters are usually pretty meticulous about their footwear, but bodybuilders are awful for this. Every bodybuilder on the planet is walking around in Jordans, and the general population also awful about this. One of my kind of core principles as a coach is that I think your hands, your feet, and your eyes are kind of like your windows to the world, right? That's how you interact with the world around you. And if you are limiting the information that your brain gets from those, then you're really selling yourself short. So with the feet, with the eyes and the hands, it's rarely a problem. With the feet, I mean, imagine if you went about your day all day long, every day, wearing mittens. How much different would your lived experience be? Like significantly. And that's what we do with our feet all the time, and we never even think about it. So again, for powerlifters, this tends not to be a problem, but if you're not a powerlifter and you are wearing crappy shoes, get better shoes or take your shoes off, right? That's my preference, is to go barefoot. Obviously, if you're prepping for a meet, most feds require shoes, and you'll need to practice that at some point. But I'll have people tell me, well, my feet are gonna get dirty. Like, okay, soap and water exists for a reason. And I'll have people tell me, well, my gym doesn't allow it. Man, go to a different gym. If you are serious about your training and your gym is not gonna accommodate what you need to do to be successful, take the time, spend the effort to go to a different gym. And along the same lines, the last thing I want to point out, I have 385 on the bar, right? So my best deadlift is 855. So many times I will see people do, all they'll put on the bar, plates and quarters. That's all they use. It's like, how often is your body actually asking for 365 or 405 versus something in between? Take the time and effort to actually be intentional with your warm-ups. I talk a lot about this online, very easy to look up, and put the right weight on the bar. It costs you nothing. It takes you an extra 10 seconds. And if you're not willing to put that time and effort in, you probably shouldn't be in the gym in the first place. So those are my rants for the day. I'm going to show, this is my last warm-up. My working weight's going to be, I think, 425, which is about 50% 1 rep max. It's really 427.5, but I don't think we have the tiny plates here. I'm going to show you two working sets. Each is going to have a little bit of a different goal. So I guess I can just get into that. And can I leave my little mic on?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So this is the last warm up here. So obviously, bar speed is a goal. I personally don't like the tools that measure bar speed. I find them to be imprecise. So the measurements are different from set to set. The important thing here, just like I was talking about with the box jumps, is intent. So if your intent is to actually move the weight like it was a true 1 rep max, you'll get what you need out of this. I'm going to talk about the difference between the two working sets real quick. The nice thing about these restorative days, if you want to get fired up, you can get fired up. That is one of the things that I'm actually pretty cool with on these days. In contrast, on the repeated effort days, I try to keep my guys pretty chill. But because the load on the bar is so low, because we're not including a whole lot of spinal loading, because we're not, trying to get hot and sweaty under breath, which I am, but I'm going to take my time, then we have a little bit of bandwidth to play with volition. Volition referring to kind of the combination of intent and aggressiveness. And so if you want to get fired up and you want to go in and tell yourself, hey, look, there's 50% on the bar. I should be able to do that for a set of 20. I'm going to do a set of 20. Do that. Don't do 20, but think about that. Approach the set that way. I think you'll get more out of it, and you'll probably have more fun with this. When I say don't actually do a set of 20, I'm doing doubles here. For my last set, oftentimes I'll give my guys, be like, do a soft AMRAP and cap it at 10, knowing that they could do 20. And that way they can, feel a little bit better about their training. Feel like, hey, I actually got some good work done, even though it was nowhere close to 1 rep max. At least I put some energy, I put some mental effort into it. So I'm going to go up to 425 now, and we'll do those 2 sets, and then we'll go on to the next movement. One more thing I want to mention. Not a big proponent of straps. Very rarely would I recommend straps. I'm still dealing with a little bit of a neurological issue I was showing Noah the other day. I can't straighten my my right pinky at all. Like this is the most I've got with my other fingers closed. I can do it if I do this, but obviously like pinky pressure is pretty important for grip. So I kind of got to use straps at this point. I am working on it. It's a separate issue that's going to take a little while to fix, but that's a little bit of a disclaimer. If you see the straps, if you don't have to have them, avoid them. Only one other thing to mention here. I personally train full body. I don't actually think that's optimal. I think you can get away with it. And again, if you're a busy guy and you only have 3 days a week to train, that's probably fine. For me right now, I don't have anything on the docket. I enjoy training full body. It's one of those trade-offs I'm comfortable making. I'm gonna make slower, if any, progress, but I'm gonna enjoy my training more. If you know the trade-offs involved in a decision and you make a suboptimal decision, you're an adult, go for it. The issue is when you don't really realize. You're like, well, I can get away with this and I'm still gonna make optimal progress. It's like, don't kid yourself, all right? Be realistic. But I think full body is a blast to train, and I do think there are ways that you can make it effective even at very high levels. Typically though, I would recommend if your goal is strength, stick to the traditional upper lower split. It's traditional for a reason. It does work pretty darn well.